Hello, it's Phillip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. Today I'm looking at a book which has come to us from The Secret Barrister. It's published by Picador, which is a Macmillan company. The Secret Barrister is not known, as we do not know the name of the person. It is believed that he is a man, and he's a practicing barrister, probably somewhere in the provincial bar. But that's about all we know. And it would appear from little snippets here and there that it is actually a male and not a female. This book is called Fake Law, The Truth About Justice in an Age of Lies. Very suitable, bearing in mind what's been happening with matters in other jurisdictions. This is a particularly important book, I think, for anybody who practices law or is involved in the legal process at any level. I've given the title a sequel continuing the depressingly truthful and rather long legal whinge that takes place involving the chaos within our legal system at the moment. And that's actually what the book is really about. Depends on your point of view, but it is actually a useful point of view to put forward. There is the book itself. It's a hardback, this one that I'm reviewing. There's the actual spine. There's nothing very much on the back. As I say, it doesn't say anything really about the Secret Barrister. It describes the Secret Barrister as a junior barrister specialising in criminal law, who authors an award-winning blog of the same name, Independent Blogger of the Year and so forth. Now that's basically the back of the book. The spine has some basic information, and I'm going to refer to that in the review. The book has got a little bit of information right at the back. There's no index or anything like that, but you do have quite an interesting a guide to busting fake law, the notes. These are basically some of the surrounding notes to go with the statements made in the book. Let me just show you this is a signed copy, actually physically signed, touched by the hand of the Secret Barrister, no less. And in addition to that, you've got, there's the front page. Then after that, there's moving on. And I can tell you, it was a signed edition as well. There's some blurb about the book there. Then there's a dedication. We only review books that we think are important. I give high stars to them because I'm not going to review a book which is rubbish. I see no point in it at all. Having written 6 books myself, it is my considered opinion that you don't bother reviewing books which actually are not of good value. I review books which are relevant to the legal profession and of more general application, purely and simply because I like them. The actual subjects are covered. There's an introduction in the contents section. Then it covers you and your home, your family, your health, your work, human rights, access to justice, our liberty, equality and due process, democracy, and then there's an epilogue at the back with our future, which I don't really want to say too much about. I think you should read the book. The introduction starts off with, I used the word whinge in the title. There is a certain amount of whinging, and you can take it from me that a lot of it has got a lot of justification. We've got the interesting case of Tony Martin, which is covered, and a lot of other cases, many of whom you know. Mr. Grayling, Chris Grayling, gets a lot of mentions, and of course all the way through the book you can see it's a book which you can read cover to cover, and you can see again all the main cases we've had recently are listed, and of course there are very useful sets of notes at the end of each of the chapters, so you can find out right at the end of the book you can find out where the actual source materials come from, and then as I've indicated right at the back you have a guide to busting fake law news. Now unfortunately the difficulty with this is that fake law is a current fake this, fake that. It's a current trendy thing. The difficulty is that you've got to treat this book seriously. The legal profession, the judiciary, members of the bar that I've met certainly, and very senior politicians do treat the book very seriously, and it makes some very profound statements on what is going wrong at the moment. As I've said, there's a lot of complaints about the system, but let me tell you a little bit taken from the very substantial reviews that have been written already, and I'm not going to put too much additional emphasis on the fact that the reviews of this book have been pretty good. Because what you've got is Secret Barrister coming back to us to, quote, debunk the biggest legal lies of our time, taking you from your own home and what happens within the home to the halls of Westminster. This is the truth about justice in an age of fake law. Those are the quotes. Now, again, we are looking actually at you as a person and your relationship with the state in its various different guises. And because it's coming to us from a criminal barrister, it's therefore going to look at it in a certain way. I'm predominantly a civil practitioner these days, having been a Crown prosecutor, so I come to it from both sides of the legal fence, if you like. The questions then that are raised, which are mentioned in all the publicity and covered in the book reviews, is: could the courts really order the death of an innocent baby? Was there an illegal immigrant who couldn't be deported because he had a pet cat? Are unelected judges truly enemies of the people? Well, lots of arguments to that. The answer is very simply that when they say order the death of your innocent baby, that's got a lot of emotion in it. And in family law in particular, and in that particular case, you have to look at the very substantial detail, as you always do with any case, with great respect to any barrister. Then the illegal immigrant, and because he had a pet cat, he couldn't be sent out of the country. Well, that is to trivialise, and actually it may be making a point, it's a political point, but it is actually trivialising what is a very serious problem about immigration policy. And I'm glad, because the book comes out, that it is trying to expose the fact that we have not thought properly about a sensible legal system for the 21st century. That must come, and it must be the work of the Law Commission to start looking urgently at some of these areas. Then you've got our unelected judges truly enemies of the people. Well, that's just nonsense. Of course they're not. And when you get newspapers making remarks of that nature, they should be ashamed of themselves. It's as simple as that. But they're selling newspapers, and I think the British public are a little bit more intelligent. They're not that stupid at all. They know exactly what they want, generally speaking, and they know a load of nonsense when they see it. So that leads us to the basic point that it's stated by him, the secret barrister. Most of us think the law is only relevant to criminals, if we even think about it at all. Well, in fact, most people don't, because they don't actually know what the courts do until they actually have the misfortune to have to go to one. And quite often when I see a client, I say, well, have you ever been to a court before? And the answer is no. If they do say yes, it's normally because of some minor trivial criminal matter where they have basically violated some particular law and they've been hauled up and fined, or something a bit more serious sometimes. Obviously, if they are substantial known offenders of the past, they will have a much better understanding of the system, because of course the law touches everybody today in all ways, whether it's intimate family matters to the very big issues that our society faces including things like Brexit, and of course all these matters like, for instance, the right to life. We fortunately don't have capital punishment here, but you've got all of those issues in many other jurisdictions. And of course the danger, which is why public legal education, and this actually should be seen as a book which is about public legal education to a certain extent, the problem is that our unfamiliarity is dangerous because it does make us vulnerable to media spin, political lies, and the kind of misinformation that frequently comes from loud-mouthed amateurs and those with vested interests. I have to say, those are quotes from fake law. Can I just say that it's not just that? It comes from politicians. It comes from people who are unattributable. It comes from leaking by very senior people in senior positions to members of the press. Obviously there is confidentiality. I'm a journalist as well as a barrister. There is a confidentiality rule which shouldn't ever be broken, but the fact is people will talk and they will put forward their views. And of course today, in a way that I've never seen before, we have huge access to commentaries which we never had before in platforms like Twitter, Facebook and so forth. So we're in a totally new world. And of course the problem is, as the secret barrister says, this fake law that we have lets the powerful and the ignorant corrupt justice without our knowledge. Worse, he says, we risk letting them make us complicit. Well, I wouldn't go as far as that, because I think in a very free society, and I think we are the freest society in the world, in the United Kingdom, my view is that we are not complicit in this because we have a lot of safeguards. We have safety mechanisms to try to prevent certainly totalitarianism and other issues. So the conclusion which the Secret Barrister comes up with, he tries to reveal the stupidity, the malice, the incompetence behind many of the biggest legal stories that we have had in recent years, all of which are controversial, and they are explained in their own way by newspapers with their own political message. And of course it depends on what newspaper you take. I take a whole range, so I get a mixture, but most people will only take one. And if you go canvassing and you see what newspaper they take, you can be fairly clear as to who they will be voting for. Believe me, I've done enough of it. But in this book, The Fake Law, I think it's a great book because, again, it probably won't be quite as successful as the groundbreaking initial publication by the Secret Barrister. But I think in this book, what he's doing is debunking the lies and building what they describe as an hilarious, alarming and eye-opening defence against the abuse of our law, our rights and our democracy. The fact that he's able to do that, I think, is magnificent in its own way when you look at the planet and see that 70% of the countries in the world are under a tyranny of one sort and another. That's the problem that we have to face because we as a democracy are in a minority. Now, the date of publication of the book is the 3rd of September 2020. This is the book again. You see a picture of Justice blindfolded. They do like that. Let me just open it in the middle. We're talking here, this is rules of evidence. They're looking at the right to a fair trial. A lot of politicians are mentioned in this book. By the way, it's not just aimed at the Tory party, although because the Tory party have been in power for a long time, that's understandable. Michael Howard gets quite a lot of stick looking at the rules of evidence as they were when he was Home Secretary. There were some, quite frankly, pretty silly things that were done a long time ago. You do get a bit of a balance, but of course the Conservatives have actually been in power, and you can see from all of the quotes, certainly within the last 10 years, a lot of it to do with Brexit, that you can see that it is going to be an attack to a certain extent on Conservative principles because they've been in power for a long period of time whilst the Labour Party has been in disarray. That is no excuse to the fundamental point, and that is that we have to guard against abuse of law, abuse of our rights and abuse of our democracy. That's really what the Secret Barrister is doing. Good luck to him. I only hope, and I said in the title that this is a bit of a whinge, I only hope he hasn't gone too far, because the trouble is you can go too far with this and people will then get bored. And there's nothing more boring and more fickle than the public when it comes to these issues, because you're up one day and you're down the next. It's as simple as that. But a thank you to the Secret Barrister and also to Picador very much for printing this book. It's not popular with some people, the people in power, but there are one or two I've met who can have a good laugh just like the rest of us. Only the laughing should stop and we should start looking at where we're going. Thank you. Bye-bye.